you selling stuff? And she's like, yeah, come in. And then it would be one of them cases where you go, oh, this is nice. How much is it? Oh, that's not for sale. Well, what about this? Oh, that's not for sale.
That sounds like American Pickers.
Yeah, she wouldn't sell anything, and depending on what time of day or month or year, or I talked to two different families. One, she pulled a gun on and ran them off,
Wow.
and another one was a family, husband, wife, 14-year-old daughter, 12-year-old son. And they came up to the front, the door was open, and they kind of stuck their head in, hello, hello, and nobody answered, so they kind of walked around the side and went around the back, and the back door was open, and the 14-year-old daughter kind of stepped up on the step and stuck her head in, hello, and they said, this crazy, long-haired, gray-haired lady, all scraggly, just picture, and that's exactly what it would have been, leaps out with a big butcher knife, like a cycle,
Jeez.
and the 14-year-old daughter just froze. Her brother grabs her, yanks her back, and I guess she chased them around the corner, around the front, and down the street. Convinced they were coming to steal her stuff.
American Horror Story.
There you go.
There you go. And these are just some, and then the local kids, learned that it was easy to get her riled up, so they'd sit out there and like toss pebbles at the windows and stuff like that just to get her.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they would torment her. Now, and I met her one day at the local cafe, and she was perfectly normal, and, that's not too long after I had moved back here, and she let me come up and we toured the Opera House. Yeah. And she seemed perfectly normal that day. But regardless, when she moved in, she turned the electricity off up here the next day. These are separately metered. The Heiser ended up renting the space downstairs and he did a couple shows up here before he passed away. And so she turned it off up here. Luckily, she was elderly, so she couldn't bring her junk up here. But she just let it fall down around her. The roof started leaking, plaster, getting wet, coming off the walls. The original piano was ruined. Parts of the floor were ruined. Coated with dust and debris. But at least it wasn't junk like it was downstairs.
Right.
Now, if she's a ghost, she's definitely going to be the poltergeist variety. And we have had some interesting things. We do definitely have a problem with things moving around. It can't be because I set things down and can't remember where I put them. But though I do have an interesting story about hammers. But and we do have some unexplained bumps and bangs and things like that. And if you're going to attribute to any of them, it'd probably be to her.
Yeah, I had heard something back here before Julie came in.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's an old building, it is an old building. It's 120 years old, and things creak and groan and moan, and, but, most of the time anymore, I just ignore it. Now, Helen, there's a little, that picture over there, the little small one, to the lower left corner of the big deal. That's a poor rendition of her 1927.
I'm right behind you, so if I hit you, sorry.
When she graduated high school. She was the last in the family to run the prom.
This little one right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And she never married. She was a tall woman, almost 6'2". She was adopted by the Harrys. One of the Harry brothers actually married her mother. And he raised her as his own, but they never took the Harry name. And when the Harry brothers themselves retired and passed away in the 50s, her and her sister inherited the business downstairs. At that time, it had morphed from clothing and a basic jeans mercantile into a hardware store. Right. And they still did hardware. And she ended up buying her sister out, and she ran the store until she wasn't able to, and sold it to Bill Heiser in 1987 because he wanted to do the restoration. She should have closed it down 30 years. Before that, the town had basically died, and there was very little or no business. She kept it open just by sheer force of will. But as I said, she never married. She had diabetes. As she got older, she lost her left leg below the knee. She had a wooden leg. And we used to come up here in the late 70s when I was still a child and buy BBs. And she'd say 522 bullets for a quarter and stuff like that. And she kind of freaked us out. Well, for one, She was very frugal. She'd have one light bulb on downstairs, right above her. She didn't run any heat, so she'd always be bundled up. She's an old lady. She was tall. She had a wooden leg in a creepy building. You know, so
Things nightmares are made out of. Yeah.
We want some babies. And when she walked, and she really was a sweetheart. She really was. But she had that old lady face that just looks like she's frowning all the time. And
Yeah, I know that feeling.
yeah, and she would drag her left leg because the wooden leg, and then she'd kind of kick it out and it would thump. So it was a unique sound, you know, a drag thump on these old wood floors. And I hadn't thought about that in years. And after we first got this, we cleaned all the semi-loads of junk out downstairs, and we were working in this back corner over there, trying to get the heaters and stuff working. And because Heiser put in some nice central heat units. He didn't put air downstairs. He put it up here, but not down there. And there was myself, a paid volunteer gentleman that was working for me, and his daughter was with us. She was probably 14 then. Yeah. And we're banging and clanging, moving stuff around, and suddenly we started hearing, you know, drag, starting at that corner over there. And you could hear it, because just like downstairs, if there was somebody there, me doing that, you'd hear it clean as day. There's no insulation between the ceiling and below. And it started at that corner, and it started coming across here. And at first I ignored it, and after about 4 or 5 minutes, I'm like, something's gotten in up there. You know, so I tell the girl, I say, go up there. You know, cat, dog, bird, something's up there banging around. Go see what it is. So she comes out, comes up the stair, makes it to the top of the stairs, hears the bang thump, screams, runs down the stairs, comes back in, refuses to go in. But it stops. So I'm thinking, well, whatever it was, it stopped. Let's get back to work. So we get back to work. 5 or 6 minutes later, it starts up again. And again, you can tell it's moving around up here. And so this time, I tell her dad to go up with her. So he comes out there, and he was part Cherokee, and he was superstitious as heck, so probably not the best choice to send him up here either. But he got out, he made it to the top of the stairs. She's right behind him. They hear the drag thump. He screams like a 10-year-old girl, and he runs back downstairs.
Great.
And again, it stops though. You know, so we listen a little bit, nothing. So we go back to work, and it's probably 10 minutes or so this time before it starts up again. Except this time it sounded like it was even up in this area, like it was on the stairs. So it was even louder to us. So I told, I said, okay, we'll all go up, since you two obviously won't. So we come up the stairs, get to the door, nothing. Come inside, look around, nothing. I said, let's, all right, go all over. You know, walk down through both sides, look and see first, you know. I even had an armadillo get into the building one time, so, you know, there were some broken windows in the back, and it just climbed up the wall and came in. That was much later. But, so we, and the guy who had the other side ended up beat it to death with a bat. But in any case, that's another story. So there's an armadillo ghost probably in here somewhere. But anyway, we go all over up on the stage. Nothing. So we go downstairs just as we're coming through the door. Downstairs. It starts up again. I'm like, all right, that's it. We go back up, and I said, whatever it is, it's obviously hiding when we're here. So let's just sit up here in the front, be real quiet, don't move. If it's an animal or whatever, it'll start moving around. So we sat down. It seemed like forever, but I'm sure it was only 5 or 6 minutes. And finally, you know, especially the girl, she starts fidgeting, and nothing. So I said, okay, that's it. So we go back downstairs, start back to work. 5 or 6 minutes later, it starts up again. So I said, hey, if it's Helen, she's walking around up there, she's more than welcome there. You know, we're going to continue working. So it went on like another 15 minutes, stopped, never heard it again. And I would be, you know, if there are such things as spirits and hauntings, she would almost certainly be around this property because it was basically her life, you know, so. What other ones? What am I missing?
Was there one whenever my dad was here?
Oh, bells. Yeah, her dad had several, and he wasn't a spooky guy
No, he was not.
by any means. But we had downstairs, I think we still got a couple of the old little bell like you'd go up to the hotel and you ding ding.
Oh, the desk bell.
Yeah. And I had a row of 3 of them down there. And her dad was working at the back there. And by himself one night. And the next day I come in and he's like, man, I had something weird happen. And I'm like, what? He goes, somebody was ringing those damn bells. I go, what are you talking about? He says, well, I'm back here and I'd hear ding, ding. And he goes, I think, because we have kind of a beeper thing on the front door. And he said, I thought somebody, and there's one of those shaky bells on there too, though it's a completely different tone. He goes, I thought somebody had come in. So I'd stop and I went up there and I'm looking around, door's still closed, nobody's here. And he goes, I'd go back and he goes, it did 3 or 4 times. He goes, somebody was ringing those damn bells. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But in any case, the last ghost, is one I bought off eBay. And I'll show it to you downstairs. I actually bid on a coffin plaque from 1867.
Nice.
I bought it for its historical significance because the coffin had belonged to the gentleman who did Lincoln's funeral in New York City. Because when Lincoln died, they moved his body around and embalmed it in New York, Philadelphia, Boston, wherever. Well, he built the hearse and the coffin that they transported him. And there was a make sure I get this in the right order. There was a gentleman who wanted to be buried by this guy because he became quite famous out of this. And he had a patent and had invented a improved dumbwaiter. You know, the things you lift up and down. He had one that if you let go, it didn't fall down and smash all your food on the ground. And he'd obviously been extremely proud of it because he actually had this brass plaque made up with his patent number and his name and everything. And he wanted it attached to his coffin when he was buried. His wife obviously wasn't so happy with that, probably because he spent a fortune and probably never made a dime off of it. And when she came into the funeral home and saw they were getting ready, and it has 2 like spikes at the back that was made to be just nailed right into the wood of the coffin. She refused to allow him to do it, said, get rid of it. So they put it on the shelf. And this gentleman that I bought it from, it was his great-grandfather, had worked for that mortician. And he said they would put it on the shelf, and then almost every day it would be moved. They would find it in various places around the mortuary. He said that went on for several months until finally the owner told his great-grandfather, to take it home, get rid of it, throw it away, do something with it, get it out of here. So he did. His grandfather took it home, put it in a drawer, and told his son, who told his son, who told this gentleman here. And I thought, well, that's all interesting, but I just wanted it because I actually looked up, found the patent number and the drawings of his deal, and I thought, that's just cool. But I'm not taking any chances. As soon as I got here, I got a big piece of wood and I nailed it to it. And ever since then, to this day, we cannot keep a hammer around here. I've got 5 hammers in here, and I guarantee you right now I can't find one. And they turn up in the weirdest freaking places. And again, not because I'm sure I write things down where they don't believe. But even Johnny, her dad mentioned, you cannot keep a dang hammer in here. So I don't know if he's decided I pissed him off, and he said, okay, you want to let me move my plaque, I'll move my hammer. But in any case, now as far as the building next door, just so you know, that was a furniture store originally. And back then you bought your coffins through the furniture dealer. You ordered a table, chairs, and your coffin. Which makes sense, buildings and sold wood products.
Mm-hmm.
As embalming stuff came along, they would hire embalmers and start doing embalming, and in fact, they ended up ordering a nice hearse, horse-drawn hearse that would do funerals. Actually, it was a combination. It was an ambulance and a hearse. So if you died on the way to the doctor, they didn't even have to change vehicles.
Oh, wow.
In fact, you see ads in the old paper where it talks about Hunsaker ambulance service, but it was also a hearse. And they ended up doing a lot of processing of dead people over there. The most interesting story I know associated with it was a gentleman who I do YouTube videos of old ghost towns. I'll take pictures of what is and then find old pictures of what was, and then I put over music and do a little short 3-4 minute video. And I had done one on Walston. I'm sorry?
Sorry to interrupt you, but we're hearing some banging back here. Is Piper moving something downstairs?
Probably.
Okay.
But she, I lost my train of thought. What was it?
Ghost Town YouTube video pictures.
Oh, yeah. Well, the guy contacted me because, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Killers of the Flower Moon, all the Osage Indian murders and all that kind of stuff. Ralston was wrapped up in a lot of that, too. His great-uncle, I think it was, I don't think it was great-grandfather, up there by the old, where the cafe is, there was another building to the left of it, it's now gone. There was a barber shop in there, and his great-uncle was part Osage, and he had had a haircut. When he stepped out onto the street, somebody was waiting for him and shot him right there on the sidewalk. This guy contacted me because he wanted to know if the building still stood, if I could send him pictures so they could have it for the family and all this other stuff. And he told me what they did is he didn't die right away. They picked him up, and I guess they figured he was going to die because they brought him down to the mortician next door, probably thinking, at least he had a medical table and so on. I'm sure they called the doctor who would have come down, but regardless, the gentleman died over there, and he wanted pictures of the buildings and the property so they could have it for his deal. Looking through on the old saloon down there, I found an interesting story. During the teens, back when baseball really was America's pastime, towns would actually entice young baseball players to their towns, get them a job and everything, just to play on the town baseball team. And one such young gentleman they brought here, it had to have been 1906 probably, and got him a job at one of the local saloons. We used to have 13 on Main Street. And now his saloon closed at midnight. So he came down to the Silver Moon because they stayed open later and served food. So I guess he came in, decided he was going to order him some food after doing his shift. Well, everybody was still wearing their 6 guns back then. As he sat down on the stool, I guess he had his gun loaded, and it went off and shot himself in the leg. Well, it severed his femoral artery, and he bled out pretty quickly and died in there. And there was a big write-up in the paper, not so much because, the horrible tragedies, because they lost a great baseball player. They had all kinds of, and he was buried in the old cemetery. I tried to find his grave. He must have had a wood marker too, because other than the fact that it said he was confirmed he was buried in the Rolston Cemetery and they had a great grand turnout, I couldn't find his grave, even though I have his name. So, but anyway, little tidbits you can add into your.
That's pretty awesome.
So, I'm sure you don't want us up here pestering you.